AHG connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
Hello. Welcome to America's Heroes Group Roundtable, live stream digital media show. Happy New Year's first. And January is Cervical Health Awareness and National Blood Donor Month. So make sure that you give those donations and pay attention to the needs of the women in your families about their cervical health. Today is Wednesday, January 8th, 2025. I'm your host, U.S. Army Combat Medic and Flight Surgeon Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold, retired. And today I have a panelist who's not retired, who's actually working very hard at many different topics. Christopher Lang is a major in the U.S. Army Reserve and currently serves as the Anti-Terrorism Officer for the U.S. Army Civil Affairs and Psychological Operations Command, Airborne. USA KPOC A.
Yeah, USA KPOC. It's a fun acronym.
KPOC is good? Okay. As a company commander during the fall of Afghanistan, he led a logistical unit in high-stakes operations. From a rural town in central Pennsylvania, Christopher is also the vice president of Operation Honor, Rural Salute, a nonprofit organization dedicated to connecting rural veterans with the community and support services nationwide. As a co-founder of Operation Honor Rural Salute, he is passionate about bridging the gap for veterans in underserved areas and fostering a sense of belonging across America, something that's sorely needed for our veterans. He has a disclaimer. He notes that any opinions expressed are his own and not those of the Department of Defense. Today's discussion is going to, I told him he was actually picking a very easy topic: anti-terrorism and current events. We have so many things going on worldwide, and this is really a complex issue. But I'm going to let you lead into it, Chris, and tell me, what are some of your major concerns right now?
It's almost easier to say like what we're not concerned about. Like there's just so much going on everywhere. Like that's one of the things. Current events is an easy topic. There's stuff going on everywhere, but it's like, okay, so what are we actually going to drill down into? I mean, obviously we got the stuff that happened on in the new year, and I know they're looking at the killing of United Healthcare. They're trying to start to spin that as an actual terrorist event. If you look at the Army's definition of terrorism, it's people using violence to try and further their political goals, which, trying to lower down healthcare and all that, or, going along with his manifesto, Luigi's manifesto, sure, that it kind of fits, but I don't know. It's weird. It's going to be interesting to see how that court case plays out.
Yeah. And then, one of the things that really that was standing out to me was that the Louisiana incident and also the incident outside of, Trump's Tower, that they were, perpetrated by two veterans, and both of them were Army veterans. And, it made me really start thinking about it, because both of them, it sounded like they had some mental health problems in the background or some imbalance in their life situation. And it made me really stop and think, is it that, because I believe the gentleman from who was actually, sort of blew himself up in this car, he actually was on leave, I believe, from Germany, and came in. And I'm wondering, are we doing enough, as far as the mental health concerns of our veterans? We know that we have many homeless veterans, and thank God this is a very rare event that we're seeing right now. But it speaks to the need that we have in the country for mental health services and making sure that we have that connectivity. I mean, I think you're way ahead of this game on this with the, Operation Honor Rural Salute. reaching out to veterans before they get into desperate situations, and actually pulling some out of those. So that is actually, one answer to this. But, what are some of your thoughts around that about, the ability for people to contend with some of the things transitioning from the military back into life, potentially being homeless, those kinds of things?
So that's kind of one of the things that I really like getting at, that I think the biggest anti-terrorism tool that we can use is mental health resources. Well-adjusted people generally don't blow themselves up.
Right.
I'm not aware of anyone that has, but it's kind of a tragic thing looking at both of their cases. I mean, everybody is right now trying to make the connections, and I feel like a lot of it's apophenia. Like, they're just looking for patterns that aren't necessarily there. Yes, they were both in Afghanistan. Yes, they were both at Fort Bragg. I don't think there's a large likelihood that either of them ever connected. That the stuff that links them is fairly, or it's just coincidental. But yeah, unfortunately, both of their lives seemed like they were taking a downturn. I know for the Louisiana attacker, he was actually barred from reenlistment and whenever he was active duty, and somehow that bar got lifted for him to join the reserve. And then he finished out and was still a 20-year veteran, and got out of the reserve. From what I can tell from everything that I'm reading, he was actually radicalized after his time in the military. But who knows what he was getting into while he was there? But it doesn't seem like we actually saw any of the radicalization, factors, markers, until he was out. But yeah, we know there's a picture floating around on the internet of his mugshot from getting a DUI. I know he was having family issues. His initial plan was to kill his whole family before going down to New Orleans. And that's another one of those weird coincidences between the two, is that both of them live pretty far away from their targets. The Special Forces Sergeant, I can't remember exactly where he was, but Elon Musk actually came out, and because he was driving a Cybertruck, he had to stop in to the charging stations and Elon Musk was able to, or whoever he had in his company, was able to plot out this guy's route, like where he started and each station that he stopped at when to get down there, because I could have a specific marker for your vehicle.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's where the similarities stop. The New Orleans attacker, he was ISIS inspired, which was kind of strange that the FBI came out immediately like, oh, we don't think this is a terror attack. He had an ISIS flag in his truck.
Yeah.
That's kind of one of those hey, as soon as we get into it, oh, hey, these are bad guys. We know this symbol.
Yeah, talk about a red flag. No pun intended.
yeah. But no, there's just too many reports going on right now to know exactly what happened. But from being a survivor of mental health issues myself, the stuff that you think is real whenever your mind's not in the right place, like the weird paths that you go down. There's an interesting thing called anti-self confabulation, where people with depression, their mind does backflips to tell them really terrible stories about themselves. Like the whole is oh, nobody actually cares about me. And then someone's like, actually, no, I care about you. And then your mind will change that. And it's oh, well, I'm such a piece of crap that this person, I was able to trick them into caring about me. But, all this weird stuff just starts to seem real, and it's not. It is, I don't know from an evolutionary perspective, what benefit that would have, but it's just one of those really sad things that whenever people start having all sorts of bad mental health issues, all sorts of awful things that seem real are real to them. Like the manifesto that the Special Forces Sergeant sent out, to the Sean Ryan show. Like a lot of that is, I mean, I know there's always stuff the U.S. government is doing that we're not all going to know about, but talking about like anti-gravity technology that China has that's launching drones the size of buses. I don't know. It seems to me that like every single time China comes out with some new piece of technology, it's like, oh yeah, this will like, change the world. Then the US, like freaks out and sends billions of dollars to the military industrial complex to come out with something that's, like so much better than it. They do. And then they realize the piece of technology that they had wasn't that great to begin with. And we really didn't need to be that worried. So as far as that, I'm not sure that like, that's actually something that people need to be worried about that's in his manifesto. I mean, again, there's always stuff that's going on that I'm not read in on. So, but I don't know. The thing that I see with those two guys is that their lives were starting to go south. Oh, and for him, he got caught cheating by his wife, and she had left it like a couple days before. And so I think it was like right before Christmas. And that's already a hard time. So yeah, like both of them, their lives were starting to go downhill. For the New Orleans guy, he unfortunately had some people that were sort of like pushing him along, considering he was radicalized. But like for the special forces sergeant, like I think it was both of them was just a mental health issue. And
and that's kind of comforting in a way because. In a sense, because it wasn't that they were hopefully they weren't objectively looking at this and saying this is a valid way of expressing myself after having my military experience and training, that this is something okay to do. And tragic in the sense that they both probably could have been saved if there had been an intervention earlier with mental health. To get them on a different course, a different track. As you were saying, they may probably confabulating all kinds of ideas or, having ideations about things and making up monsters about, what was going on. For you to turn around and say, I'm going to kill my family. It's like, wow, you've taken another step in another direction.
It's way down there.
Yeah. But what are some of your things about anti-terrorism? I mean, do you think that we need to be more alert as a nation now? And I'm looking at, the physical implementation of things like what happened in Louisiana and what happened in front of, Trump's residence. But we have the cyber side of things too. And we seem to be being more attacked to me on the AI side and the cyber side than we are physically having someone in front of you. And that can be, I think, just as destructive to our society and to our way of living.
So I'm lucky that I've got a cousin that's fairly high up in the cybersecurity, realm of business. And I talk to him a lot. He's a writer. He's got a great book out there called Rogue State. It's named Steve Lang. And it is
okay.
He just sort of took a bunch of stories that he's got and like put them all into one book. It's quite the read. But talking with him, like the only reason that you and I have not been targeted is because we're not a juicy enough target. That if something's online, it's able to be breached. And what is it? I've got a buddy that went cyber in the Army that he and I were in a maneuver captain's career course together, and then we both went off different directions. I left the infantry, went to logistics, and he went to cyber. And some of the stuff that he's telling me is absolutely horrifying, but it's again, it's one of those like scary but comforting things at the same time. There's a quote in the first Men in Black movie where Agent K is talking. He's like, there's always something going on. There's always like, this alien bug that's going to kill us, or, like this alien spaceship that's coming in to blow us up. And the only reason that society continues is that people don't know about it. Because like, if we were constantly aware of all the threats that there were to us, we would be like, everyone would be gray and losing their hair.
Oh, and be helpless would be just laying on the ground waiting for
Like it just, there's so many like existential threats out there. But the one thing from my aspect with the anti-terrorism and physical security thing is it's hard to sell it because it's inconvenient. And that's the biggest issue that I've got with the program with my unit in the Army, is that like getting commanders to understand is like, hey, the United States is not the sanctuary that it once was. That the enemy is in the wood line. Like, we are being watched. We have Chinese police stations in our own country that we don't know about. We know that a guy that I actually work with a couple years ago, he was his wife was contacted by a Wagner recruiter, and here in Fayetteville. But yeah, the enemy is out there, and people just get really complacent, and mostly that's because doing security is inconvenient. And that's we actually had a meeting this morning where we were talking that one of the best ways to save people's lives, to and continue pushing the security and beating the hey, the bad guys are there drum, is just by being a pain. And it's not a fun job to do. But you think about that security expert that was in the World Trade Center. He knew that he did his research. He had some buddies out there, and they said, it's like, yeah, you're probably going to get a bomb in the garage. And so he had a plan for whenever somebody drove a car bomb into the garage at the bottom of the World Trade Center, and he knew what to do. And then whenever one of his buddies told him that, like, yeah, for my expertise, I believe that we're probably going to get hit by a plane next. So he had his guys, I think it was one of the investment companies. I can't remember the name of the company to save my life right now. But anyways, the guy had the employees practicing these drills, and I'm sure everybody thought it was a giant pain until their building got hit by a plane, and then he got all of his people out. And the dude was a freaking hero. He went back in and didn't make it out, but yeah, you just kind of have to be a pain to people because yes, it's inconvenient. Nobody wants to, continuously do these really frustrating things. They want to, have a simple life. You gotta avoid complacency, though.
Yeah. That's really a very important point. Is that we can get lulled into a sense of security, and it's really actually part of the Constitution, and part of the Declaration of Independence. Really, were focused on having tranquility and a peaceful, society where you could thrive. And, that was the kind of a notion undergirding it, is that you wouldn't have to worry about being invaded, or you have, protective force around you that keeps you safe and your family safe at night. And, being pulled away from that for a moment to say, oh, bad things do happen, is really shattering for people, I think, in the general population. People who are in the, who are first responders and people who are in the military, have actually been trained to respond to things differently. It's like running towards, it's the old story of the, of the sheep herder, right? And that, we have to, be on guard for people. But now we're starting to move into a time period. And what was interesting to me about what happened in Louisiana was the rapidity with which the people in Louisiana stood up and said, this happened, but we're going to go on. And it reminded me of what happens in Israel. This has been going on for decades now, where in Israel they'll clean everything up. You have a bombing, you have something happen, they clean the site up completely and say, get back to the restaurant. Keep going on with life. And it really, it's to try to lessen the impact or the supposed reward for those people who want to do devious deeds and do things to get a reaction from people. But returning to a normality in a relatively quick period of time is really an important thing to happen.
Oh yeah, Israel, they're just sort of used to it, so it's just all right, so whatever, it's on Tuesday. But I don't like the whole thing, like, with 9/11, it was like, okay, so we're never going back to the way things were. It's like, all right, yeah, I get that a little bit. You can't give up your freedoms, though. Like, you still have to live. The whole thing is like, okay, so now we're going to absolutely watch everybody everywhere to make sure nobody's doing anything, but somehow these guys still slip through with all the, surveillance that the country has on us. That, I like the juxtaposition between like Tel Aviv and New Orleans, because Tel Aviv, okay, cool, it's just another missile, but New Orleans, like, terrorist attacks don't happen like that much in this country,
Right.
but yeah, it's nice to see them like, all right, so yeah, this was a really bad thing, we need to get back to partying, because that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
But,
not to let them have a win. Right.
Yeah. I did a study in college. I wrote a paper on PTSD. It was in the English Navy. The sailors that consumed their rum ration were actually 80% less likely to get shell shock than the ones that didn't. So, like maybe a little bit of booze and on Bourbon Street helped them out, helped them be like, all right, yeah, we're good, we're moving on.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's a weird statistic.
Of course, if they drank enough of the rum, they may not even know if anything happened. But that's another story. But that's really interesting study. But we have multiple countries now, and without getting into all the geopolitical stuff in the background and all the controversies and all that, but we do have several countries that are looking at taking sovereignty away from other countries. We have Russia, we have North Korea, we have China, with Taiwan, North Korea with South Korea, and we still have the war going on overseas now with Russia, invading Ukraine. So, I'm wondering, what is it that we need to do to talk to the American people for them to understand
I still got you.
Yeah, oh, you still got me? Okay. Yeah. And for some reason a Teams thing came up, which I'm not even working with. But so this thing about when people are actually engaging in acts of dictatorship, for people here to understand that this is really not the desirable thing. This is not something that is consistent with our Constitution or what we are trying to do. That radicalization of the people, like in New Orleans, you have to take a jump from why we are the greatest nation on earth, right? Why we espouse the things that we want to espouse about being free, about having family, having a prosperous nation, being in a more uplifting kind of view. And when you jump into a radicalized mentality of just indiscriminately killing people, it's really a mind bend. And with this social media thing now, and with Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, we have Twitter, we have all these things out here. Now the freedom of speech is being questioned about whether they should be open platforms, so people can say what they want to say. I just hope that there is a way of educating people in the country on why things were established the way they were, with a constitution, with a Declaration of Independence, and how and what the moral fabric of the country is, why we do the things the way we do.
Absolutely, yeah. The sad fact of the matter is the virtues that the country was founded on, founding fathers didn't follow all of them. A lot of the founding fathers owned slaves and all that. And the way that we avoided taxes whenever the country first came around is by selling off land to the Native Americans.
Right.
The great thing about the Constitution, though, is that, like, as we've gone on, we have done more to follow the philosophy that was used to create the Constitution. Man is fallible. We all make mistakes. And the founding fathers were not perfect, but we're just lucky enough that there were enough philosophers inside that group. And then I like when people say, it's like, oh, the founding father would have hated this. The founding fathers hated each other. Like, those guys fought often. There was hardly, like, there were so many, like, fractured groups within that. And the reason that George Washington became president so easily is because he was, like, at the end of the revolution, like, the one guy that everyone's like, oh yeah, you know, that dude's a really stand-up guy. We all like him. So, like, he just sort of came out on top that way. But yeah, as we go along with the country and, like, progressing towards the future, it is that education thing of, you know, trying to let everybody know that this is why we are how we are, is because this is the foundation that our country is built upon, is that, you know, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which was also plagiarized, but it's still a great, like, plagiarism works. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But yeah, it's the whole thing that goes back to being stewards of freedom. I like the Thomas Jefferson quote, from time to time, the tree of liberty must be refreshed with the blood of patriots and tyrants. Like, every once in a while, like, we do need a, you know, to ensure that the good guys are actually the ones in power. And there will, like, we have it set up so that we can have peaceful revolutions, like, you know, every 2 and 4 years with elections and all that. But it's if we get complacent and we let things go by, then we let the people that are trying to use violence to push their political goals actually get into political power.
Yeah.
And you see that happening on countries, like, all over the world, where I was reading a study on Palestine of why use violence as opposed to work in the political system. And everything sort of boils down to resources, is that they got more bang for their buck by blowing things up than they did by working within the system. And that's a flawed system. That's a system that would, you know, over here we would call that, like, incredibly corrupt. Yeah. So I'm again going off on, like, a little bit of a tangent, but yeah, in order to keep ourselves safe, we have to be completely vigilant. We, you know, need to live our lives, but you still need to be paying attention to the threats that, you know, are external and internal or with the country. And, you know, whether it's, you know, people trying to influence with radicalization, or, you know, people that are very well trained in violence that are having mental health issues.
Right. Well, Major Christopher Lang, of course, we've come to the end of the show. Every time we start talking, we can go on for hours, I know. And this year is going to allow us to be, allow us to be coming back forth again and again, because I know this is going to be a very interesting year as far as geopolitics goes around the world, global politics. But thank you for your service. And I really am glad that we had the opportunity to talk today. And we're going to move on to another show. But you are great. The Anti-Terrorism Officer for the U.S. Army Civil Affairs and Psychological Operations Command, Airborne. Have a wonderful evening.
You too, man. Thank you so much for having me, sir.
Okay, stay with us for the next show. Mm-hmm.
Welcome. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
Where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered.
Hello, welcome to America's Heroes Group Roundtable live stream digital media show. Happy New Year and January Cervical Health Awareness and National Blood Donor Month. Today is Wednesday, January 8th, 2025. I'm your host, U.S. Army Combat Medic and Flight Surgeon Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold, retired. And I have a panelist with me. I follow her columns all the time. She's an incredible, prolific writer on healthcare issues. But Lillian Hughes is the Oregonian homeless and mental health reporter for the Kaiser Family Foundation. The Kaiser Family Foundation is the independent source for health policy, research, polling, and news. Today, we're going to discuss an article that Lillian wrote that this bowled me over. This is an article that she wrote on January 2nd, 2025. And for many rural women, finding maternity care outweighs concerns about abortion access. And it's really a very incredible, pivotal point that she's going to be discussing. But she actually wrote about someone, Cheyenne McCoy, and what she had to go through and endure to get care for preeclampsia, obstetrical care that would save her life. And she had to travel to do it. But I'm going to open it now. And Lillian, just tell us about this article. I mean, it really grabbed me because we are so focused on abortion in the country, but we don't even talk about some of the basic maternal health needs.
Absolutely. Thank you, Colonel, for having me today. Just to be super clear, I am the Oregonian's homelessness reporter now. When I was reporting that article for Kaiser Family Health News, that was in a previous life as a freelancer, and then it took a while to get it up on the airwaves. But anyway, yeah, the story was really started for me when I heard about an attempt of the Oregon legislature to try to do a better job providing abortion care more broadly across rural parts of the state, because though it's a very protective state for abortion, Oregon, like many states, doesn't have a lot of access for abortion care in the rural areas of the state. And then as I dug into the issue and started talking to people living out there, they were like, well, you're kind of missing the point. Like, the thing that we're most concerned about is maternity care and maternal care. And I think, some people will say abortion care is part of that. So fine. I think that's possibly true, but it's also true that these folks were wanting to have a baby and not being able to find the care for that. And there's a really large number of people in that situation. And one woman I talked to, it really stuck with me, where she said, I think that people are more moderate on abortion here than you might think, even though it's a conservative community, but they're not going to make compromises where they're taking public money to fund abortion care if they're not getting the benefit of better maternity care, which is a high priority for people in those areas.
Yeah, that's really an important point, to highlight. It's, great, that you're going to, have us look at abortion care rights, but for our regular maternal care, preeclampsia, it's a constellation of different features. High blood pressure, the person can actually have swelling, there's a sudden weight gain, or edema, particularly around the face and the hands where people come in, and they also have protein in the urine, and that means that the kidneys are not functioning. The kidneys are actually filtering through proteins that should be stopped. You should be able to keep those in your body. They have a low platelet count below 100,000 is one of the normal things that you see. But it can happen anywhere anywhere after the 20th week, but the 24th to the 27th week are critical. And what the horrible thing about this is that there's really no cure for it. It's delivering the baby. And it has to be done with someone who knows about preeclampsia and is actually administering the correct medications and taking care of the mother in the right way. And so the result could be that the person has seizures, a stroke, and even death for the mother and the baby. So this is a crisis situation. Yeah. And for you to have to get into a car, and especially if you're a single mom or whatever that's going on, you have to drive 25 miles, and in your article, 700 miles, right?
Yeah. And this was 100%. And this was it's 45 miles from this particular place over a mountain pass, which in the winter in Oregon is almost undrivable. So there is an emergency room in this town, but there's no obstetrician on staff anymore, which is common now in a lot of rural communities, as I'm sure you know. So that is one of the things they were saying, is that it's one thing to have an emergency room, but for something like preeclampsia, which is incredibly dangerous and something that, really you should have a specialized medical professional looking after you, as you've just said, that is something that you don't want to have to drive 45 miles to get, especially, on a what could be dangerous highway, depending on the weather conditions. And then the other thing that I was hearing from the women I spoke to who'd recently had children, they were also saying, like, they weren't necessarily, and I don't want to say this as an accusation because I don't know anything about the care provided at that particular hospital, but they weren't necessarily satisfied with the care they were getting. And so this woman ended up making the decision to drive even further, 2 hours away, to Boise, Idaho, where there were obstetricians on staff. And what was crazy to me is the abortion thing comes right back into it when you start talking about Idaho. Because of the abortion ban in Idaho, they've lost a lot of fetal medicine providers. So sort of the expertise, the regional expertise in that area had gone down because of the laws in Idaho, even though those weren't the laws in Oregon. And then it was compounded by the fact that this small town Oregon facility had closed their birthing center. So it was all kind of this perfect storm where, on the one hand, they were more concerned about maternal care, but actually the laws around abortion care in the neighboring state had affected the level of maternal care they were getting as well.
Yeah, that's really an interesting point. So interstate differences can actually really compound the problem and make it worse, from what you're saying. And when you were talking about going over the mountain pass, the 45 miles, I was thinking about the snow and all that. And one of the other things that can happen is that you have visual problems with preeclampsia.
Yeah, you'd have to have someone try
services. So it's like a perfect storm.
Yes, 100%. I think the other thing that was interesting about the intersection of the two issues of sort of pregnancy care and abortion care was that the Planned Parenthood in the main Planned Parenthood in Oregon, there's two Planned Parenthood organizations here, but anyway, one of the bigger one did open a new Planned Parenthood center that was closer to this small town where the women I spoke to were living. So abortion had sort of become more available. They built it there because it was close to the Boise metro area. And in doing some research, this didn't kind of come into the story, but I found that had actually happened in a bunch of places around the country. So protective states had built abortion care facilities like as close as they could to cities and non-protective states to give more people access. And that was just also this funny sort of, I don't even know what to call it, but it was just like an interesting situation. Like it gave these people more access to one type of care. And Planned Parenthood, of course, does a lot of things beyond abortion, right? Like they're always saying that, but it's true. They provide a ton of options for care. And actually some, I forget the number, so I won't quote them, but some relatively small percentage of the procedures they do are abortion procedures. So I do think it's probably a benefit to people in the area to have a Planned Parenthood clinic there for a whole bunch of reasons. But it was interesting that it's like this rural community did end up having like the side benefit of having the Planned Parenthood clinic built there, but it was only built there really because of the laws in Idaho, not because of the laws in Oregon.
Yeah, because there was one thing that was really kind of an interesting thing. Oregon's Baker County Health Department was looking at this issue of mobile units and whether a mobile unit would be advisable. And it was really interesting how they analyzed that and took a look at the potential of using mobile units. Maybe go on a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, they were interested in the idea of a mobile unit because they thought it would be a good way to reach outlying areas with better education about things like birth control and sort of just best practices around health, all sorts of health, including reproductive health. But they were concerned that if they were required by the state to include abortion care as one of their services, people would avoid using the mobile unit for anything else because they would be seen in their conservative community as having access to an abortion, even if that's not what they were doing. So they were worried that the stigma of the mobile unit even offering abortion would be a problem. And it looks like I've lost the kernel. So I don't know now if people are watching me by myself in this room. I'm just going to wait to see if he comes back. Hi.
Okay, yes, yeah, they had me backstage for some reason. I got shunted back there. But I heard what you were saying. That's very interesting. They was talking about this, and it was a study that you had referred to about JAMA in early December that examined 5,000 acute care hospitals and found that in 2022, 52% of rural hospitals lacked obstetrical care after more than a decade of unit closures. And it's like, are we paying attention though? Is this something that, we can put, stuffed animals downtown for, events for, holidays. We can do all kinds of things. And it's like, well, we really need to be paying attention to some of the basic needs of people, especially in the rural communities, because the access issue is well documented. We know it. And they said 2/3 of people in maternity care deserts are in rural communities. So, we know it's there. So what do you think we should be doing? Is it that we need to have more advocacy? We need to be writing out legislators? How do we solve this problem?
I mean, the problem is obstetric care, like a lot of types of medical care, doesn't make a lot of money. And so the numbers don't add up when you're talking about the number of people in a small rural community who are giving birth. I mean, we know that a lot of rural communities are getting older, not younger, and the birth rates are going down. That's true in Baker County. It's true in a lot of rural counties. And so it doesn't pencil out for healthcare providers that are trying to make ends meet. So I think it's like a lot of things, including in education, which is another area I've reported a lot on, where it's a service and we have to decide as a society, is it a service that we think should be available to everybody regardless of where they live, or is it a service that should only be available in places where it makes monetary sense? I think that in cities, my understanding, and somebody could correct me on this because I haven't done a ton of deep business reporting for obstetric care, but like obstetric care isn't the moneymaker usually. But in cities, there's enough people through the hospital for that service that it does pencil out, right? It makes sense. It's a needed service, obviously. And they can make it make sense, but the numbers don't make sense in rural communities. So the answer from, the back office where you're trying to figure out, well, how do I make all this make sense with my various, hospitals in my network, is to consolidate and have, okay, well, this size population can go to this one and this size population can go to this one. But then they're not taking into account that mountain pass, right? Like 45 miles on a straight highway in Iowa in the summer is really different than 45 miles over a mountain pass in Oregon in the winter. So I think that is a part of rural care that is often missed, is like it's one thing to look at the numbers on paper and it's another thing to try to live it.
Yeah, and there was also a relationship. It seems like with Planned Parenthood with Ontario, there was a clinic that was on the border of Oregon, and that
that's the Planned Parenthood clinic I was mentioning. Yeah,
and that it seems like that's something, but still, it's still a distance.
It's still a distance, and I think again it depends on what service you need and who you are. One thing that was interesting was I spoke to a doctor who's quoted in this story and didn't want to be identified at all because they were so concerned about their safety living in a small conservative town. This wasn't the same town. This was a different town in Oregon, because that doctor was offering abortion services. And their belief was that the people who most needed those services locally were the ones who were least empowered to get it somewhere else. So these were people who couldn't necessarily drive an hour and a half to a Planned Parenthood clinic that was, even nearby, let alone drive 3 hours to a place that was, much further out. And those were people she was saying the doctor was saying who only would, they would only get that abortion care that they needed if they were able to get it at their local clinic, because that was the only access point they really had to healthcare. And so that doctor was arguing that care, needed to be offered right there. And I think you could make the same argument for obstetric care or other kinds of maternal care. Like if you don't have some community care, you're in trouble. I will say in Baker County, the woman I spoke to were very, very positive about the care they had received from the family doctors who were in town. There was a small clinic of family doctors, one of whom, Neil DeFries, I quoted in the story, and the woman I spoke to were very pleased with the care offered by that clinic, but they weren't delivering babies because they no longer had a birthing center in town. So you could get some of your care from those doctors, but you had to transition to a doctor at one of the facilities where you could give birth, which was, as we've said, 45 miles away at the closest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that also puts a financial burden right on the person that actually is trying to seek the care. And in the rural community, you may have, especially people who are in an impoverished situation, where they may not have the money to do that or to buy the gas, to drive, 100 miles.
That's right. And the public health department was trying to address that need to some extent. There are some Medicaid resources for that, but it's just one more thing on top of all the things you have to do to try to figure out, okay, well, now I also need to get my gas prices covered, right? As opposed to it being somebody in town. And that's, even if you're low income, you can still get there. And so when you take that away and make it further out. Also, we're talking about the 45 miles, that's like point to point from downtown Baker City to the place in the hospital. But a lot of people in that county don't live in downtown Baker City. They live off on country roads, miles and miles out of town. So it can be much further than that as well.
Yeah. And, one of the things that was kind of scary, too, about there was this discussion where they were, in your article, you were talking about a doctor who was talking about giving care. Was mentioning another doctor in another section of the state, but they were fearful for their lives, for their families' lives. Because people might target them because of providing care, which further diminishes people's likelihood of wanting to practice there. But is there something that we're missing as far as protecting these providers as well?
That's a great question, and not something I've done a lot of reporting on. But that doctor was definitely fearful, and really, the doctor that I spoke to in Baker City said more or less the same thing. He'd made the choice not to provide that care because he was worried he would essentially lose his job or lose the trust of his patients if he did. So it was interesting to me to find a doctor in a different part of the state who'd made a different choice, but for essentially the same reasons, and was fearful about it. And it looks like we're having technical difficulties again, but I don't have a clear answer to the best way to protect those doctors, other than I think if you made that kind of care universal somehow, and it was just expected that all doctors could potentially be providing it, it might change the risk of one individual being targeted. But I'm not sure that's true. That's just a theory that I've come up with. You've frozen on my screen, sir. Oh, I can hear you.
Yes, can you hear me now? Yes, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's we've been having difficulties with this platform, the stability of it, I guess. But yeah, so that is something that because I know some people who are OB/GYN providers, and they're pretty much scared, of providing services now, because if they go from one state to another, the laws change so radically that they are afraid of their practices, about being put in jail for providing care.
Yeah, and that I don't know if you stopped talking or if the thing went out, but that was another part of the issue with the Boise, Idaho facility losing providers and having the laws that they have, because the doctors I spoke to in Baker City said, if we have somebody who's pregnant and doesn't necessarily want an abortion, but there's something going on with the pregnancy and the pregnancy may have to be terminated, they don't necessarily have the same access to care in Boise that they used to. So instead of going 2 hours to Boise, they're talking about going all the way to Portland, Oregon, where they could certainly get the services they needed, but that's, an extra couple hours away. I don't remember exactly, but I think I drove almost 4 hours to get out there. So, I think it's just a clear example that federal laws do impact people where they live, regardless of the state law. The state laws have an effect, but so do the federal laws. They have an effect even in places where the state has a different, has a different law. I don't know if I made sense there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess there's legislation out there now that's going to be addressing some of this. I know communities as we're going forward, and that will try to overcome some of the difficulties that people are facing right now. But I just still feel for all the women who are out there that having preeclampsia and you have nowhere to turn. This is it's just unconscionable. We're one of the richest countries in the world. And we have to start really thinking about how we're spending our money and, what it's going towards. I was, the health director for the state of Illinois for some time, and I dealt with 92 local health departments. We had 102 counties in Illinois, and, the resources that are required. Luckily, we have a governor who's really doing a lot now, putting money in behind the words to try to help people and help these health departments. But Governor Pritzker stands, maybe alone in some of this fray. We need to have legislators that pay attention to the health concerns of people and really understand that that can be a decision between life and death. Now, that mother may have other children that are going to be left alone. And we just don't know all the situations. And, I think a lot more needs to be done from our legislative side to make sure that people have this access, that when it comes down to life and death situations, your political viewpoints, your personal viewpoints aside, this is someone's life, and this is someone else's family. And God forbid it will happen in one of the legislators' families or to them personally. But this is something that I think needs to have more attention, and people need to really focus on. I was just really bowled over, by the article and the depth of research that you had with this, because it really told both sides of a story, the two-sided coin. And we all automatically say, oh, yeah, they should have this, we should have abortion rights there. And they're like, well, that's nice, but
it's not the thing we care about the most. And the other interesting thing I'll say as you're talking about, life and death is, as I was talking to them, I was coming in asking about maternal care, and there was a definitely need for that. But there was also people said they wanted an ICU, they wanted a general surgeon, they wanted a dialysis clinic. These medical services are also many, many miles away. In some cases at that same hospital, hospital that's 45 miles over the pass. So I talked to a few families who had someone who needed dialysis. So that's however many times a week, you'd know better than me. And they have to go to the town 45 miles away to get it. So it's not only, obstetric care, I think, is incredibly important. And obviously we're talking about mothers and babies, as you say, but there's also a lot of other people with health conditions that aren't getting treatment in their region as well.
Yeah. Because, actually, when I was the director for public health back in 2008, I really approached the legislators and said, they were talking about doulas and, bringing that on board. I said, it's a nice idea, but you're not structured the right way for that. And they were like, what do you mean? We could have access, have more people. And I said, look, you have hospitals in rural areas where you have one OB, you have two OBs, and they're ready to do a C-section. They're there to take care of preeclampsia and other issues. I said, so you put the doulas in their area and take away their patient base, they're going to be gone. And I said, you have a golden rule, the 30-minute rule. And if you can't get to medical care within 30 minutes, your survivability goes down, your risk of death goes up. And I had to really tell them that. I said, you need to be thinking more creatively and more structurally about how to put this system together. And some of it was followed, but I still think there is a weakness in the system. The OBs, it was hard for the rural community to keep people there, specialists there. And that's in all the different fields, right? So general surgery and such. And so,
the general surgeon I spoke to in Nebraska, I was starting to pursue a story on the shortage of general surgeons in rural areas, and I got this job, so I stopped. But I spoke to him, and he was saying that he's one guy for miles and miles and miles and miles, and there's like no other general surgeon. So he's done a whole bunch of crazy surgeries. But he liked living there, so he was there. But it was kind of like, well, who comes next? I mean, it was like, how are you going to find these people to move out here who are qualified and to provide care that people in cities expect as their absolute right?
Right. Well, we have a minute to go. And is there anything else you want to say about this article that people need to be aware of? Because we can go on for hours on this because there's so many different issues you're actually highlighting in this. And and how people view this whole issue. But is this something that you think that people need to know in a nutshell about being involved in this kind of issue?
I'll just say that I'm so grateful, especially to the young women who shared their experience with me. I'm someone coming in from out of town, and they took the time and gave me the trust to tell me their side of the story. And I was incredibly impressed with how well it had been thought through. And I think often, especially in national media, it's easy to kind of dismiss the opinions of people who live in rural areas or who are young or who are fill in the blank, not sort of people in power. And I was grateful to them for talking to me. And I think we should ask them what they think as we're making policy. I think that doesn't happen enough.
Absolutely. That's right. You get the end user involved.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but Cheyenne McCoy is a superstar.
Yeah, totally.
But Lillian Hughes is always a pleasure. Like I said, I follow your articles because you're really hitting some really extremely important ones, especially with healthcare on the block right now with public health and all that coming up. But we are going to stay here, stay tuned. We have another show coming up. And America's Heroes Group moves forward. Okay, thank you, Lillian.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
Do you have me?
Yes. Hey, yeah. Well, welcome to America's Heroes Group Roundtable live stream digital media show.
Do you have me?
Happy New Year's.
I don't hear you.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Let me hear you say something.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, Doc, I cannot hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay. So I am okay. The show. So welcome to a stream digital media show. Happy New Year and January Cervical Health Awareness and National Blood Donor Month. Today is Wednesday, January 8th, 2025. I'm your host, U.S. Army Combat Medic and Flight Surgeon Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold, retired. We have a partner. I'm a Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold, U.S. Army Combat Medic veteran, host of a group, digital media talk show, and CEO of ADAPHP LLC. Today we have a special guest, and it's William H. Hooks. He is a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, a JAG officer, trial attorney, and outstanding retired honorable Cook County Circuit Court judge who now practices law in a private law firm setting. He obtained his BA in sociology from DePaul University, his JD from Chicago-Kent College of Law, IIT, and served in several positions as a former Illinois Courts Commissioner. Illinois Judicial Council Chair, Criminal Justice Committee,
I'm sorry, Doc, can you hear me?
Illinois Judicial Conference Chair. Yes. Yes. Mhm. And
Okay, I'm flashing. You want me to try logging in again?
Justice Advisory Council member, and in the Criminal Division of the Circuit Court of Cook County, Illinois. As Attorney Hooks is getting lined up to be on, he actually has a remarkable life story. I think you should be able to hear about what he's done, not only for the military and for our nation, but he also has a incredible life journey as a federal prosecutor and as a judge. He has done many things. His uncle actually was Benjamin Hooks, who was the president of the NAACP. He was actually over the NAACP. And Judge, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Oh, you can hear me. Good.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yeah, did a great job introducing you, your background. I'll send you the bio that I created for you. But really, I was telling them that you've had a distinguished career, both as a judge, as an attorney in private practice now, and that in the Marine Corps, you officer, trial attorney, and outstanding honorable Cook County Circuit Court law in private practice settings. So from there, I just wanted to have a discussion about your life's journey, because it's a very interesting one. And I think we were talking earlier about, how your life's journey was in the military. You transitioned to a legal career, and then you went on to actually become a full judge, and some of the things that you were doing with that, and now transitioning into a private practice. But why don't you start with telling us about your military career as a Marine, a proud Marine?
Thank you, Colonel. I entered the Marine Corps out of college, finished college in 3 years, and went to DePaul University here in Chicago. So the Marine Corps has several ways of commissioning folks. The one you hear about a lot is of course, through the Service Academy, Annapolis would be ours. Although we've had a few Marine officers go through West Point or the Air Force Academy, it's very, very rare. The other way is through Navy ROTC in college. The prominent, the most frequent way of those commissioning is through the platoon leaders class. And that's where a college student would go to Quantico once they pass the Naval Officers exam, get in shape. Then you may be able to go through the platoon leaders class in Quantico, Virginia for 6 weeks, 2 summers, or a 10-week session. In my case, I came through the PLC program. 2 6-week sessions, Quantico, Virginia, between the freshman year, in my case, between the sophomore and junior year and the junior year and senior year. Upon graduation from college, you can opt to go on active duty in the Marine Corps or not. Of course, I chose to go on active duty. So the Officer Candidate School, 12 weeks long, but then every Marine officer has to go to Quantico, Virginia again for 6 months of infantry training. And Marine officers, whether they're coming in as lawyers, pilots, people don't realize how large our population is in terms of those officers that are going to flight school. But it doesn't matter. If you're going to be a Marine officer, even though you're going to be a jet pilot, a helicopter pilot, a lawyer, you have to do the 12 weeks and you have to do the 6 months. And then after that, you go wherever you go. And Colonel, in my case, when I first went in after college, I was plugged in after my infantry training to the communication school in Quantico, also in Quantico, Virginia, a 3-month course in terms of tactical communications. And that course required that you have a top secret clearance, and I got that. and it allowed me to progress later once I was assigned to Camp Lejeune to other fields, so in particular the signals intelligence electronic warfare field, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I did the communications for 2nd Marine Regiment, 2nd Marine Division initially, and then I was requested to go over to the what they call 2nd Radio Battalion, which is the cryptologic branch, and I took over electronic intelligence platoon there. So that started my journey in the SIG-INT field, as they call it. And that SIG-INT field, my first assignment was to go to an Army training facility. I had 3 months up at Fort Devens, Massachusetts, which doesn't exist anymore. I was trained. I was in the Signals Intelligence Tactical Operations course for 3 months on the Army base. I was one of 2 lieutenants chosen out of my occupational field. The Marine Corps only has 2 quotas. It only had 2 quotas to go to Fort Devens. Wonderful experience, beautiful area, although it was cold as all get up. That base up in Fort Devens trains Army security agency folks, which are the cryptologic people, not police officers in the Army, but the cryptologic people. The officers from the Army that came there during that time, all had to go through Fort Huachuca Army Intel School at the time. And it was a wonderful course. By the time I got there, you had to have top secret compartment access clearance, TSSI as they call it. But the Army was extremely thorough and learned a great deal before I went back to the fleet. Okay. Colonel, did you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So that started me into the intel field. From there, I had assignments with the Marine Corps in the intelligence field. I was sent down to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, with what they call the Naval Security Group, which is similar to the Army Security Agency. Again, not law enforcement, all cryptologic. But it was because of my 3 months up at Fort Devens that I was selected to go down to a Naval Security Group activity in Guantanamo Bay, which is the only security group station at the time that was commanded by Marines and primarily manned by Marines. So I went down there for 3 months to be an operations officer because of some activities down there, and because the Army had given me, along with the Marine Corps, the most current information that I needed in order to fill that particular assignment down in Guantanamo Bay. And another good experience. And then after that 3-month period, came back to my Camp Lejeune. And I served in the signals intelligence field, both as an electronic intelligence officer. I was a briefer on Russian electronics and Russian signals intelligence, and also what they call communication security. So I was a briefing officer, and later I became the assistant S3 operations officer down at Camp Lejeune, and had other assignments in Puerto Rico and other places, both with the Marine Corps and the Naval Security Group. So that was that first tour on active duty. And after that, I came back and went to law school, stayed in the intelligence community in law school. And I became the operations officer for a Naval Security Group reserve activity here in Chicago, near Chicago.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what you haven't done.
Well,
that's quite a.
I really enjoyed working with the various branches. I will tell you,
in the military, and
Chicago school, it was very enjoyable to work with it.
Also did some things overseas, going back and forth.
Not quite as much as you, but I did get a chance to go to Fort Meade while I was in law school in the summertime, the National Security Agency. And Fort Meade, of course, is another Army base. I don't know if I lost you, Colonel. Okay, Colonel, I lost my visual.
Well, hello. Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah, we're having this technical difficulty. I'm getting messages from StreamYard that they're having difficulties in their mechanism. So they are trying to correct things in the background. But we will try to continue the discussion. And yeah, your phone is on mute,
Wait a second. Can you hear me now, Colonel?
Judge Hooks. Maybe you can put that
Can you
on.
hear me now,
Attorney
Colonel?
Hooks.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
I have it on now. Can you hear me? I took mute off.
Oh, your phone is on mute, Judge Hooks.
No, I had it off.
Oh, it's off now. It's off now. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So, we can move on into, this middle transition period because you were just starting to talk about that.
Okay.
But StreamYard sending me messages that their platform is having problems, so they keep going back and forth trying to fix things.
Okay.
And it's not the internet connectivity.
Okay. Thank you. But can you hear me, Colonel?
Yeah, but one of the things that you started to allude to is your transition, from the military into the legal system, and how you began to get involved with just doing casework and the court system itself. But maybe you can talk a little bit more about that.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
And we are, and one of the things that is
Attorney, can you hear me?
Yes.
Attorney Bill. Well, so we are waiting in the background for Dr. Arnold. And so
Yes.
where are you in Chicago?
Well, I'm in Flossmoor, Illinois, outside of Chicago.
Oh, that is wonderful. I know Flossmoor, Illinois. So I was hearing your conversation, and
Yes.
so you've been wonderful. The U.S. Marines, and so you have a great experience with that. But so just continue telling us more about you. So you were a judge, so you had to deal with a lot of different cases.
I did. I mentioned my signals intelligence training and also service in the Marine Corps, and while I was in law school. But once I finished law school, I went back to duty. I think the Colonel is back. Colonel Arnold's back. I went back on active duty after law school, and I went back in as a judge advocate in the Marine Corps. And that just means I was a lawyer. So I had to go through 3 months of Naval Justice School up in Newport, Rhode Island, and then went to Quantico, Virginia, served 3 years down there, and got out and came back to private practice here in Chicago with a large law firm here, and did insurance defense, defending doctors, hospitals, and a variety of insurance companies that were insured by major insurance companies before transitioning to my own law firm.
Can you hear us, Dr. Arnold?
Yes,
Are
I
you
can.
there, Dr.
Yes.
Arnold?
Yes.
Okay,
StreamYard's
wonderful.
in the background trying to fix things.
Good.
Modern technology. My communication skills in the Marine Corps that can't help you out today.
Yeah. Yeah, they're having a problem with StreamYard. They're sending messages to me saying that they're trying to configure something or do something. But anyway, so how so you moved on from. So you're now in private practice, right? Because I know you retired as a judge after 16 years of service to this country, this nation, through the Cook County court system. So what is it you're looking for in the private to accomplish?
Okay, I had a well-oiled law firm before I went to the bench, and I did federal criminal work. I did medical malpractice after having done it on the defense side. In my own private law firm, I was mostly a plaintiff's attorney in that area with others, and I did federal criminal work. I'm the first African-American president of the federal bar here in Chicago. That helped. I was president of the Cook County Bar the year before. I was president of the federal bar first and the Cook County Bar. So what I'm doing now is I'd like to practice about 4 more years in the fields that I practiced with before. I just have a different perspective, which after 16 years on the state court bench in the criminal division. I'm also interested in getting back involved with civil rights work as I did before. But now on a even higher level, since I've actually been a judge for 16 years and a variety of different civil rights actions I'm interested in doing.
Yeah, very good.
Having an impact for this last 4 or 5 years before I maybe retire. So I'm having fun out here. After I always wanted to come back to private practice. Now that dream has occurred.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. Well, one of the things, where are you located and how do people get in touch with you?
Okay, I'm located in Chicago. My offices when I was out before were typically downtown. Now I have a friend that owns a building that he invited me to move into with his, adjacent to his law firm at 3525 South King Drive, Dr. Martin Luther King Drive. That location is great because there's free parking. I can go to the federal building or the circuit court easily without paying that $40 parking downtown. My clients don't have to come pay to see me to park. So it's a wonderful place to be. And I can spring to all the courts in the south suburbs, the north suburbs, and more easily than doing so from the loop. So that's where I am. In terms of point of contact, my phone number is 224-553-5252. 224-553-5252. So, that's where I am. That's what I'm doing. Very comfortable, beautiful facility. Doc came down there as soon as I opened. Got a chance to really get good by coming in. And so, if anybody has anything in the area of criminal law or medical malpractice, or if you have a corporation that's been sued, or if you want to do a suit of some sort, we have consultations and set up an appointment through my administrative assistant and we can get rolling. But I have a variety of internal investigations for corporations and for some government entities. That's always a possibility. So that's kind of the range of things I'm currently doing.
Fantastic. Yeah, because one of the things that you did that we haven't really talked about, and I want to have you come back again to talk about some of the things that you're seeing out there as you're going through private practice, and to talk, expound on it a little bit more. But one of the things that you did was with the criminal court system for veterans who were getting in trouble with the law and making sure that they had adequate representation. So you did a fantastic job. Pulling veterans out of trouble who were running into issues that, the courts made this look the other, not pay attention to some of the background of the military veteran, but you actually made it important for people to recognize the veterans.
Well, thank you for that. And you actually helped participate in some of those activities over in the criminal division. So while I was a felony judge, every week, on one day every 2 weeks, I had the large veterans call for the main criminal division for the Circuit Court of Cook County. And veterans who had been arrested for felonies, variety of felonies, could apply to have their case heard in front of me or transferred to me, where I had a whole team of a separate staff from my regular courtroom staff to serve them. I had the great offices of the University of Chicago, Dr. Terrell Odom. I had the Veterans Administration and several professionals that were assigned to me to help my veterans. I had a separate prosecutor and a separate public defender for that call. So we were able to turn around some veterans' lives that could have really been in a bad situation if they did not have the type of staffing I had in that special court. And I had options to offer them to get them out that they were in and minimize the punitive aspects. That court was a rehabilitation court. And my goal was not to warehouse people, but to save them and have particular care for them because of what they've done for this country in their unguarded moments before they got into trouble out here.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, not does it affect the veteran, their entire family, their whole lineage, of incarcerated and, being, jailed for something, because if not but for, the efforts of your criminal court division, they would have been, in serious trouble. So,
well, Doc,
but do you take post-conviction cases, release cases for veterans? One of the viewers is asking that.
Yeah, it depends on the nature of the post-conviction situation. I had many of those cases as a judge, but I take selected post-conviction matters. I also had experience with the civil rights cases, including the fiasco with John Burge, the Chicago police detective, that tortured many suspects, and which cost the taxpayers a lot of money. It seemed like I ended up getting a lot of those cases as a judge. I am interested in cases where somebody has been wrongfully incarcerated. I will pick a selected amount of those cases and try to help out on those cases. They're quite labor intense, but if there's some like that, we can talk about it. And I partner up in those cases with some people that have been doing it even longer than I. But those are possibilities in terms of the array of things that. Yes, sir.
There's one person that we're going to have on, and it's going to be a talk at about 7 p.m. But he actually is James, James Smith the second. But he's a U.S. Marine Corps veteran. It sounds familiar.
Yeah.
But he is also co-founder, director of Black Deported Veterans of America. And he was asking, do you do any work in immigration or with deported veterans?
Well, I have immigration lawyers. I have not personally done an immigration case. Now, I've represented persons who have foreign corporations that are doing business here, and if they've had problems with their government in terms of some disagreements where their government may issue a warrant against them here. But the immigration field is something that should really be handled by, in my opinion, a lawyer who is really has an in-depth knowledge of immigration matters. One of the areas I forgot to mention, Doc, was that I am a Marine judge advocate. I was a Marine judge advocate, but I am fully certified to go practice as a civilian in the military court systems for all four branches. And when I was in private practice before, I had a variety of cases on military bases, including white collar cases. So, active military and reservists that have matters, and I've done the reservist cases too as a private attorney. So I did them in uniform, and I did them outside, when I became a civilian attorney. So that is an interest. Now, immigrants, veterans that have immigration problems, I do know the attorneys that do that work, and I would let them get involved with that population because I see that as a
okay. Well, Judge Hooks, But Honorable Judge.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
Hello, welcome to America's Heroes Group Roundtable live stream digital media show. Happy New Year's and January's Cervical Health Awareness and National Blood Donor Month. Today is Wednesday, January 8th, 2025. I'm your host, U.S. Army combat medic and flight surgeon, Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold, retired. I have a special panelist with me tonight. And this person wrote an article that this sort of knocked my socks off. I was reading it, and she does this on a regular basis, by the way. But this is Julie Rovner. She is the KFF Health News Chief Washington Correspondent, and is really on top of things that are going on in the federal government. One of the greatest sources. I read her columns all the time. So she's on my speed dial as far as my reads for the day. But we're going to have a discussion about the article that Stephanie Amor and Julie 2024, and it's Trump's picks for top health jobs, not just team of rivals, but team of opponents. I thought it was really interesting, the terminology that was used there. But Julie, why don't you tell us more about this? I have some specific questions, but you can tell us more about your article and why you thought it was so important to write it.
Well, first of all, we don't know whether any of these people are going to be confirmed yet to the jobs that they have been named to by President-elect Trump. But what we do know is that if they do end up in these jobs, and these are the biggest jobs at the Department of Health and Human Services, obviously starting with the secretary, but also, the people who are going to be in charge of the Food and Drug Administration and the National Institutes of Health and the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. They all have very diverse views, in many cases diverse from each other. So they don't necessarily agree with, each other or necessarily with the president-elect, or, it could devolve into quite the food fight amongst them and between them. And it might interfere with their ability to do some of the things that they anticipate doing, or some of the things that the president-elect anticipates them doing. I can't hear you. I think you must be frozen.
Okay. Julie?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Hi. Can you hear me, Julie?
Yes, I can.
Okay, because we were breaking up quite a bit.
I know. Sorry.
Can you hear? Hi, Julie.
Hi.
So continue telling us more a little bit about the article that he's talking about while Dr. Arnold is coming back.
Okay. Sorry about the technical difficulties.
That's
So,
okay.
Hello. It seems like we're having technical difficulties again.
See, he's out, so you can just continue.
Okay.
Continue
So my
going.
colleague Stephanie Armour and I talked to a number of these people, and there are some big health issues that the nation's going to be looking at next year. Among them, abortion and vaccine policy, and diet drugs, and all of these things are things that these people who've been named to head these big important agencies at the Department of Health and Human Services don't agree on. So we don't exactly know what they're going to pursue, and whether they might end up getting in each other's way in their ability to basically do their jobs. I mean, it's not unusual at the Department of Health and Human Services for people to not agree on every single issue. But this looks like a group of people that disagrees on a lot of very large issues, which is unusual.
Wow. Dr. Arnold, you're here.
Okay. Wow. Yes. Yeah, because I was looking at some of the people that you mentioned in there. Dave Weldon for the CDC, and Marty Makary for the FDA, and then Jay Bhattacharya for the NIH. Yeah, Bhattacharya. Yeah, and I'm wondering, it sounds like some of them have some expertise, that they can actually lend to the agencies, but the overall prevailing feeling seems to be that it's always top down, And one of the things that was mentioned is the fear that may be generated in some of them by one of their colleagues was saying that, you always speak to your boss, and your boss, to their needs or what their directives are. And that's really kind of a scary kind of thing, especially when we start talking about topics such as abortion or vaccines and, just general health care, which I really it should be left to the experts. But you were mentioning also that people are, sort of bucking the system of expertise, right? And so maybe you can talk about that a little bit more. What is that all about?
Yeah, it's not a good time for to be an expert in Washington. There's a lot of people who really believe that people should make their own decisions about their health care. And sort of the more expertise you have, the less likely you are to be trusted. And so we have a lot of people, coming in. Jay Bhattacharya, who would be the head of the NIH, was one of the people who wrote the Great Barrington Declaration, which was the treatise that recommended that basically COVID be allowed to just run wild and burn through the population, and that we would try to protect the people most at risk, the elderly and those with, compromised immune systems. And then, everybody else could get sick and get over it, and we could go back to normal. And that was highly controversial, and basically disputed by much of mainstream medicine, if you will, including some of the other people who have been named to some of these positions. You have people like Dr. Oz, who was, a TV doctor, also a cardiac thoracic surgeon. I mean, he's definitely a doctor, but he has no experience with Medicare or Medicaid or the Affordable Care Act, and yet that's what he would be put in charge of. That was a very curious choice to a lot of people.
Yeah.
We will first get confirmation hearings for the secretaries. So we'll see a confirmation hearing at some point for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. We won't get confirmation hearings for these second tier people probably until February. And then I think we'll learn a lot more about what it is that they think. But meanwhile, we don't necessarily know what President-elect Trump thinks about some of these issues. He's changed his mind on so many health issues over the years. We know he is not exactly an expert on this, nor is it really at the top of his action agenda, the way healthcare and immigration are.
Yes. And then, it's a pick for, the Surgeon General, Watt. And I was wondering more about, her background. I actually did took a liberty, and I started looking in the side of, the Wikipedia and that kind of thing. And she had a tragic history. I mean, she was trained in the islands for her MD degree, but she actually had an unfortunate incident where her father was killed by a gun when she was fishing. The tackle box fell over, and it was an accidental shooting, ending in her father's death, which is a horrible thing for anyone to go through. But I'm trying to, one of the things she said was that, the vaccines were a gift from God. And when she was referencing COVID-19 vaccines, and that was during the Trump administration, he had, Operation Warp Speed and that kind of thing. And, actually that did probably save quite a few lives, around the nation. And so, I'm trying to figure out whether the picks that he has are really matched to the positions that he's trying to put them into. And that's really where the big issue is really coming in with me. And from one of the things I'm fearful of is that if you're not really that well matched, you're fearful for your job all the time, and you may bend your will a little bit. In the direction of what someone is saying, whether you think it's good or not.
Well, sometimes if you're not well matched for your job, you end up basically doing what the career staff tell you, but that doesn't seem to be what this administration is all about. This administration is about not listening to career staff. In fact, in some cases, pushing out the career staff. These are career people who've been there through Democratic and Republican administrations, who are expert at their jobs and who do know how to do them. So, you know, the one thing that all of these people have in common, and I can't remember whether this was in the story or not, is that they're all basically good on TV. I mean, that's something that's really important to President-elect Trump, and he says it. He admits this. He wants people who will be good spokespeople, who are, and they've all been Fox contributors at some point, because that's what Trump watches, and that's basically where they've all come from. Is their expertise necessarily well matched to the jobs they've been named to? I could see how you could move some of them around and they would be better matched to other things. But it's not my administration. So we'll basically wait and see, all of these positions, even these, under the secretary positions, are subject to Senate confirmation, including for the first time this year, the director of the CDC, which used to be just someone who would be appointed by the president and the secretary of HHS. But now the Senate gets to pass on that person too. Yes. So all of these people, including the nominee for Surgeon General, will come up before the Senate for hearings and votes.
Yeah, and one of the fears too is that when you're in an environment like that, you can end up having a lot of misinformation or disinformation that is created. These myths are created and propagated and amplified by sometimes misguided or charlatan scientists. So, as far as things like, Leo Kanner and Bruno Bettelheim, they were in the 1950s, and they were actually more in a psychological, realm. They were looking at psychoanalytically based theories surrounding autism, and they said that it was a thing called the career-oriented refrigerator mother, which was really in opposition to the women's movement and everything else. Just a ridiculous idea. And, then biological explanation sort of supplanted that. But then you had Andrew Wakefield, and Wakefield is the one that, actually started pushing this idea about MMR being related to, and later on we found out he was actually sanctioned for it, had his his medical license revoked. He had a paper in the Lancet about, MMR and autism, and really faulty. Which was retracted, right? And so he was really one of the initial people. But once people get something in their hands, they start to look at it and say, well, here you have a disaffected group. You have a group of attorneys that are going to support them. And then you have this conspiracy theory about the government, about scientists, about medical care. And so then you start moving on to things like thiomersal. And one of the things that they found is that we have tons of, mercury in the ocean from industrial waste that are getting into our fish, and we eat that. And when they started looking at thiomersal, they said, well, the rate of autism is still going up, even though people are not using the MMR now. They're not, they're withdrawing from it. So in those populations that withdrew from it, they're still seeing, autism. So this is the thing that, once you have, hard scientific evidence, and it amazes me all the people will say, well, I don't believe in science, but they pick up their cell phone, right, which is based on science, and they use that as a communication, their computers and all that. So it's really a strange kind of situation we're in. But what do you think that people really need to be? Do we need to be more involved now than ever in talking to our legislators, or in making sure that the media is extremely important, because it's been under attack, of course, and that Mark Zuckerberg and and Facebook and with Twitter and all of that. They're talking about getting rid of the restrictions on the veracity of the information that's being put into their content. That they want to open that wide, for freedom of speech, so that people can espouse all kinds of theories. It seems like that's a dangerous milieu that we're in right now. If you combine that kind of thinking along with, directives that are not based on science.
It is. It's a hard time to be an expert. It's a hard time to be a journalist. People want to be, people are getting their information from narrower and narrower places, and they're in places where what they have been told is just being confirmed to them over and over and over again, so that when they hear something different, they're disinclined to believe it. And we have people who are, basically we don't agree as a society on a set of facts anymore. And I don't know how you fix it. I intend to continue to do what I do and try to report on, what it is that I cover and where my expertise is. And I hope that people will believe me. I hope that people won't believe that I have, some hidden agenda. My entire agenda is to help people understand how our health system functions, how the government makes health policy, and how people can be involved in expressing their desires for what policy should or shouldn't be. I mean, that's why I got into journalism. I wanted to help explain things to people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So, one of the things that also is really kind of important is that, a lot of the things like, Kennedy, even those positions, what I thought was really interesting about your article too, is that these agencies don't operate, in isolation. So they're talking about medical and healthcare issues, NIH, the FDA, and so they're going to have to work together. And I'm not sure of how that's going to complicate the lives of the people in the agency that are trying to get some basic functions done, like assuring drug safety or making sure foods are safe and the vaccines are, approved in a timely manner, even for flu every year. So any thoughts on that about, this intersectionality of, these people who are going to be running these powerful agencies?
Well, of course, we have, overarching all of this, this Doge, the Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy project to try and make the government more efficient, ostensibly by cutting the number of people who work for the government. And I think that has a lot of people, as I say, people who've worked throughout Democratic and Republican administrations, very upset, and many of them looking for the exits, retiring if they're of retirement age, retiring early, going and finding other jobs in the private sector. So there is a lot of concern that there will be a government brain drain from these agencies, and that there won't be the people who will actually carry out these functions that, keep our drugs, get our drugs approved and keep our food safe and do our biomedical research.
Well, yeah, that is amazing. And Dr. Arnold is coming right back, but yeah, that's very concerning about the future. And so, for how many years you've been making articles?
I started when President Reagan was still in office. So this is just starting my 39th year of covering health policy in Washington. I've seen it come and go, and I've seen lots of changes from Republican administrations to Democratic administrations, back to Republican administrations, back to Democratic administrations. But this is the most frontal attack I think I've ever seen on science and expertise in my almost 40 years of doing this.
Yeah, wow. Mhm. But what kind of, do you think that their authority is going to be questioned, internally within the agency, like you were talking about the career employees within these agencies, and they are going to look at them and say, why are you following a directive out externally, even though it's your boss? That is, and I'm sure that was going on in the first administration, where COVID was a big issue, and that was always a big problem. But a lot of career people are at the point where they're saying, I'm close to retirement age, and it's time to go because I don't want to go through this again. And that's going to sort of leave our systems weakened, and we're going to have expertise from some other place, people willing to come in and step into this. And do you think that is something we have to be concerned about?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We've seen this. I mean, I live in the Washington, D.C. suburbs, so I'm surrounded by people who work in NIH and FDA, and a lot of them are actively looking for other jobs. They've just, they lived through the first Trump administration, which was for many of them not a fun time, and through the COVID pandemic, and they're just, they believe in what they do. Most people who work for the federal government could be making more money in the private sector. They could even be getting better benefits in the private sector. But they believe in the mission. And I think some of them are worried that the mission is going to be undercut. And the question is, who will want to come in and take these jobs? Will there be people to follow them who are also interested in the mission, or will it become a completely different mission? I mean, there are a lot of people now coming to Washington who believe that, the best thing we could do to the federal government is slash it by, a magnitude, some order of magnitude. And there are some that believe that is what Trump got a mandate to do. And maybe they don't know, or they don't care that a lot of them depend on these programs, that someone needs to run. I mean, do they want Medicare and Medicaid to just go away? Do they want FDA to go away? Do they want no one to approve drugs or ensure that food is safe? Do they really think it could be done with 1/10 of the people who do it now? We're going to have to see all those things.
Yeah, and it's really scary because the expertise that is needed is not something you generate overnight. It takes years of dedication, and some of those people have been working there 20, 30, 40 years and know the system inside and out. And there's certain parts of the system you can write it down on paper, but there's certain parts that you have to know, and it's by experience that you learn the system. And but we're running out of time, but I know we're going to have you back again, hopefully with a better stable platform. But I was thinking that this is going to be an issue that's going to be hitting us every month, and I'm looking forward to looking at your articles as you're writing them, because I know you're going to be entrenched in multiple issues that are coming up. You just mentioned some of them tonight, but thank you very, very much for writing this article. It illuminated and taught me a lot about what's I'd like informed on this, especially with the public health side, because that's one of my passions too. So thank you, Julie Robner.
Thank you.
And we are going to make sure that we see you again. But stay with us. We have another episode coming up, and take care, Julie, and God bless in the new year.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome, market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618. Market, advertise.
Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
Welcome to America's Heroes Group Roundtable live stream digital media show. Happy New Year and January Cervical Health Awareness and National Blood Donor Month. Today is Wednesday, January 8th, 2025. I'm your host, U.S. Army Combat retired, and I have an esteemed panelist with me today. James L. Smith II is a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, co-founder and director of Black he says any expressed opinions and references of Black deported veterans of America are the viewpoint of BDVA and not related to anyone's America Heroes Group Incorporated. But this is really a very, very important issue. And, the Black Deported Veterans of America is a nonprofit support group for those that served in the United States military and were subsequently deported to the countries where they were born. The predominant makeup of the group is by those that identify as Black or Asian African American, but support is often for all deported veterans. This website is geared towards raising awareness of the plight of the Black deported veterans. Bios and updates on select individual Black deported veterans are available. Updates on changes in U.S. policy and the avenues for public and private support are also noted. It's also found on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And I'm going to this because I think this is such an important issue and mission. And the discussion is going to be on Black Deported Veterans of America, the mission, agenda, programs, and services. Welcome, 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 James. I am really honored to have you on the show. And when I started looking at your website, it was like a new world to me because I wasn't even aware that it was going on to this extent. And all the images of all the veterans you had listed, it was like I was rolling down the page and I kept rolling and rolling. And I was like, they can't be doing this to this many veterans that serve this country. So, James, tell us about your, the group and what you're trying to get accomplished.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you for giving us an opportunity to speak on this platform. BDVA, Black Deported Veterans of America, came as an offshoot after realizing that so many of them, Americans, first of all, very few Americans even know about deported veterans and the issue at hand. But those that do generally think of this as just a Hispanic problem. When we think of immigration, it's, especially for people like me that come from the North, I'm from Detroit, Michigan, so my connection with the Hispanic culture didn't come until I joined the Marine Corps. I had never met anyone from the Hispanic culture, in Detroit as I came up. So I, in my ignorance, I thought everybody that spoke Spanish were all, basically on the same team. It wasn't until I got into the Marine Corps, and actually I was overseas, that a Mexican guy explained to me that there was a difference between Puerto Ricans, between Cubans, and such. And through that process, I began to understand there were nuances, but I never looked at them as different. Okay, there was never a thing of wondering where you came from and if that's how to grade you or to assess who you were. But unfortunately, that's what wound up happening to veterans that were not born here in America. So basically, because of a geographical point in their lives, the beginning of their lives, that stopped them from being treated equal as you and I, as veterans that are there, because we were born here. So, if we happen to get a DUI, we may pay a fine and go on about our business, whereas one of them happens to get a DUI, they can be expelled from this country. And so that was the first pretense and things that we didn't understand deported veterans. But then in the beginning, I'd only heard of one. His name was Rohan Coombs. And when I say beginning, for me, it was in 2013 is when I came into this as a documentarian. And I heard about this guy, Rohan Coombs. And I thought it was an offshoot because I just never thought of Black people being deported in the process. So I thought he was, damn, that's messed up for this one brother, didn't really get it. Then as years went on, I learned about Roman Sabal and Howard Bailey. So again, these were just these couples, but I didn't really know. While going along, riding along with Jesus Manuel Valenzuela, who's this one of the founders and iconic members of, founders of the deported veteran movement, especially on this side of the border. I wound up being followed by this brother named David Bairu from Kenya. And he also was already a friend of Manny, Jesus Manuel Valenzuela, but we call him Manny. He was already a friend of Manny's, and Manny told me, yeah, this is a cool cat. He's from Kenya. I was like, Kenya, wow. Okay, so now I met a guy that's from, I heard about a guy from Jamaica, or two guys from Jamaica and one guy from Belize, but this was the first time that I actually had met a Black deported veteran. And the ironic portion about him was he never committed a crime. He was deported. He never committed a crime. Most that you hear that have been deported had some kind of interaction with the law, even if it's so minor, but interaction with the law. But he had never committed a crime. So we became Facebook friends, and over that process, I wound up meeting this cat named Charles Lee Severin from Commonwealth of Dominica. And I would tell you, during the process of all of this, I'm learning geographical things and historic things and sociological things that I didn't know. When he said Commonwealth of Dominica, I was like, oh, you mean Dominican Republic? He goes, no, Commonwealth of Dominica. I'm like, where's that? He's like, do you know where the Lower Antilles is? I go, yeah. He said, well, go on your map and just keep zooming in and you're going to eventually get there. And I did. It's just a little tiny place, about the size of Okinawa. You know what I'm saying? So again, now as it's going, I'm realizing I'm learning different people from different sections, and I'm also marveled that people are coming from these other countries to come and serve here in the United States, and for different reasons. Some for patriotic reasons, some for schools, some for citizenship, But in almost every case, they will tell you that they were promised citizenship in the process. So I'm getting those stories. I'm starting to begin to understand that this is more than just, or extrapolate from the few, that this is more than just a few and stuff. So in October of 2021, the Biden administration allowed for veterans that have been deported to be able to come to the border of Mexico, both in Juarez and in TJ. It allowed for them to come there to get COVID shots and to get COVID shots and to get their record for CMP, for compensation benefits and stuff. And so I cheered for my buddies that were down in TJ and the ones, my other brothers that were over there in Juarez. And then I called out to these guys. I was like, did you get to go to the consulate or did you get to go to the embassy to do this? And they knew nothing about this. And I was like, what are you talking about? It's like, they didn't take care. I was like, didn't these people call you and tell you? And they were like, they're hearing it for the first time from me. So we decided that because I was here, what we do is we just pass on this information. What wound up happening was we did a reach out, and I reached out to like every Black veteran organization or Black organization like NAACP, NAD, and tried to bring this to their attention. My local, I'm here in San Diego. My local San Diego NAACP branch had a acting president at the time, and they had moved the message up to the chairperson for the Armed Forces and Veterans Affairs Committee for California and Hawaii, Dr. Antonisha Williamson-Burles. And so she gives me a call and she says, look, I got this note that said that someone said there's a thing called Black deported veterans. Is this true? So I immediately I was like, do you have a messenger account? She goes, yes. And I put her on a messenger phone and I called her, like, it was just like all these guys answered from Honduras, from Jamaica, from Trinidad, from Dominican Republic, from England. One of our co-founders, rest in peace, Rudy Richardson, all came in, and she found out, wow, this is true. So she became one of our first advocates, and she said, you need to become an organization, not just this little group. You need to become an organization. And so that's where, between those things that happened, that's where we wound up coming, because we realized that no one was really looking out for us. There were organizations like Deported Veterans Support House that had raised the awareness. Hell, everybody that I interviewed, every veteran that I interviewed said there were veterans from every place around the world, in India, in Europe, in Asia, all around. But the picture you kept seeing, if you look up deported veterans, and I'll tell you, even when you get off of here, you get a break. Look up deported veterans and click on images and see how many people you see that look like them. All right? Then remember what you saw on our website and understand why Black deported veterans had to become an issue.
Yeah, that's amazing, because when you were saying that, a lot of people don't know even the regular geography of our countries, right? And so we have the 23 countries that make up North America, and if you look at North America, it's actually comprised of Canada, Mexico, and the United States. The United States is not North America. That's a part of North America. And you have 7 Central American countries. You have 13 Caribbean islands that make up part of North America. So our history is inextricably linked, with these cultures. I mean, most of the business slave trade routes and all of that came through the islands. A lot of that was part of the building of this country, of the United States. And so if you have someone who comes in and actually puts a uniform on, which only less than 1% of people in the country do, by the way, those people come in and put the uniform on to defend the country, put their lives in risk, and then to be deported seems, contrary to what the American theme is supposed to be about, right?
I think yes, most definitely it is in contrary, because most people are surprised when they hear about this situation. Right. They're like, well, I thought that they were citizens, or well, if you served, you should automatically become a citizen. And that's what generally I got as I traveled across America, from Nebraska, from Kansas, from Colorado, New Mexico, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Washington State, Florida, Texas. Every place that I went, each time that I just randomly asked someone, or interviewed someone there, everyone pretty much felt that that's what was, that if you serve, you should be able to, automatically get your citizenship. And the thing, unfortunately, is in a lot of cases, some of our brothers and sisters, because it's not just guys that this happened to, it's also women. Because we have one of our sisters, Laura Mesa from Costa Rica, that wound up being deported. The overall situation is, in most cases, they thought that when they took their oath, that they were good to go. Some of their commands either thought it or told them, you don't need to do anything else. You took the oath, you were fine. And some of them, I believe, actually thought that they weren't trying to just steer them wrong. It became a belief because there was no process that was in line, especially equilaterally across every one of the departments of defense. There was no process that said this has to be done, this has to be done, this has to be done. And then the way it got done, it was up to you. If you had the knowledge that you had to do it, you had to wind up trying to get it done. And getting it done sometimes was impossible because you got deployed to places like Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever you may have been at the time. So, or what time you served, Vietnam, whichever. It goes against the principle ideology. To me, it's like once I found out about this issue, it was like when you find out that you may like read in the newspaper about someone that met a tragic end over in Florida, and it's like, oh, okay, damn, that's messed up. But then you find out that's your second cousin. There's a different feeling now that you have with it. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. I served with all of these cats. I never asked them where they came from. I never graded them about where they were born based upon those things. And I understood that a bullet didn't discriminate. It didn't say, wait a minute, I'm not going to hit you if you didn't come from here or because you came from here. So when I look at it, I'm like, well, you hear people say, thank you for your service, or they only want to focus on the sacrifice if you lost a limb or you lost a life. And I personally, I share the ideology that no, you need to understand that the sacrifice actually came in boot camp, because that's where we gave up a part of our humanity to become the best killer that you wanted us to be. No matter what we look like in that uniform, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marine Corps, Coast Guard, everybody, they were training us to get the other guy. Okay, that's what we were trained to do. And there had to be a part of our humanity that we had to sacrifice to be able to do that, to be able to do that job, and try not to have that mentally play with us. I share, it's like, dude, I came for 17 years in my life. What was it? Do not kill by the law. Do not kill in church. Do not kill in school. And then this becomes what we wind up doing. So this is what you do to someone that has sacrificed a part of their humanity, have agreed to give up their life so that you can have the liberties to be able to go to the movies, to go to the mall, to even say, I don't like that, give your finger to the president, to be able to have those freedoms and liberties. But you want to put them out because they were born here. That's ridiculous. And then to only understand that it's to only understand or think that it's a Hispanic issue, and when I say ignorance, I don't mean it in to be degrading to someone, but it goes to our ignorance of not knowing how immigration works, and that it is that it affects blacks and Asians and other communities just as well.
Yeah, because one of the things, there are a few points that you brought up that really are really extremely important. And I know you had asked a question for one of our earlier guests, but I'm going to get you in touch with him because both of you have the same call sign, Semper Fi.
Yes, sir.
Judge Hooks.
Yeah.
But he would love to talk to you. I mean, I think you would have a great conversation. But you were talking about people being deported and serving, and a bullet doesn't have discriminate, but some of those people actually may have had service connected disabilities or service-connected issues. So those were just like kind of swept under the carpet when they were deported. I'm not sure of how they were even addressed. And maybe you can talk about some success stories too that your organization.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna tell you, like, for instance, like what you're talking about, like one of the offshoots of what winds up happening. Okay. As a business, you have to prepare for everything. So I look at the VA and understand that each time a person goes to file for their CMP, the VA or its representatives can't keep running to Congress and saying, okay, give me the money for this one guy, give me the money for this one person. So you have to have stepped back and allotted this money to, in your budget, that money was going to be there. So on average, or in most cases, these veterans have been gone for at least a decade. So let's take a person that's been that would have been 100% service connected, right? But because he didn't get their assessment, that they're not getting that money, but the VA still sees them as viable, so they're still getting money for them. All right. So then a person that was gone 10 years, 100%, that's about 400 grand. All right, that's a little over 400 grand, right, for one person. All right, now we're estimating in the thousands that have been deported. All right, I mean, even if you just go by like the numbers, there were 135 in the MV program. There were 135 veterans returned on parole. So if you just take those 135 right there, you're talking about $40 million. Over $40 million right there. Where did that money go to? Because you never hear the VA talking about we have an overage, in those situations. So that's one way that it affects them in that situation. They're not able to get mental health care because even though the VA tells us that your deportation status has nothing to do with stopping you or from your benefits, but it does because I can't access those benefits. I can't come into the country. You won't give that authority to just any hospital. It's only those that are within the foreign medical program. And there's only a few of those. And for that, you have to have already been assessed as service connected. And you can only be seen for that issue. So in many cases, many of us didn't know, because I didn't know anything. I got out in '86. I didn't know anything about the VA until 2005, almost 19 years later. The only thing, when I got out, the only thing I knew about the VA was, or thought about the VA, is where you went if you were blown up or you were about to die. I didn't know anything about going there to get benefits. I didn't know anything about I could go there for my hospital, any of my hospitalization or any of my medical or anything like that. So I can imagine what it was like for some that got out even earlier than I did and wound up running in, into the law, into a situation, and then being deported. So they never saw any of their benefits. They never got to utilize their GI Bill. And crazy thing, like the post 9/11 GI Bill, there's a stipulation in there that allows that for a little over 28 grand for you to go to a foreign school, but they couldn't get that money to be able to go to any schools in the countries that they have been deported to, because if you're not already attached in the system before you get up out of there, it's really hard to get into the system. After.
Yeah. But but there were some things I saw on a website where some people may have gotten their citizenship. I'm not sure. Yeah, that actually won.
Well, actually, even more than that. Okay, so Kevin, my co-founder, David Badio, came back in 2023, right? And is it 2023? Yeah. Okay, so David came back in 2023, and September 2023. And November 17th, because it was the day before my birthday, he got his naturalization. He was naturalized and he's now a citizen. He's a nursing student here at San Diego City College. He has custody of his son. He brought his son here from actually his son came with his mother, but he's taking custody and responsibility. Beautiful young man, very smart, very wild man. he's a success story. He's the reason why, if people go, well, why should we bring them back? You know, they're just going to reoffend, or they may do this. He shows you, given the opportunity, what can happen. Kevin Martinez, who is featured in the film Bring Them Home by Rob Young. It's the first film that I saw that shows black people in it, you know, that have been deported. And Kevin, he's working on his master's degree right now. He's in the Pennsylvania area working on his master's degree, has his work with family. He's a standout in the Belizean community. And there's others that just don't want their information out there. But yeah, there are some that have come back. Kevin came back before Mr. Biden came into office. But David is a result of the MV program. He came back through MV, so it was successful for him. It's actually, as I said, it was been successful for 138 people on coming back. But of those, only 45 have naturalized. All right, and 19 of the other 19, well, 19 of those also are have their LPR, their legal permanent residency reinstated. All right, so that basically leaves 74 of those 138 who right now are at risk of being deported if the new administration follow its edict of trying to do away with humanitarian parole, because that is the status that they are on right now. So there are some successful stories like Hector Barajas, a person we would call the father of our movement and stuff. He has his naturalization, but very few get their naturalization. Some are lucky to get their LPR.
Yeah, you know, we always talk about, you know, I was thinking about what you're saying, you know, we have a flag for, you know, POW and MIAs, you know, and, you know, so, you know, these people should not be left behind, you know, and, you know, some of them have been, you know, have had, you know, wounds of war. And, you know, this is something that as part of my family, you know, the military family, we should not be turning our backs on them, and we should be helping them. And, you know, so how do people get in touch with your organization? And, you know, we're good. We have about a couple of minutes to go.
Okay. Well, one, you can reach our organization by the website, www.b as in boy, D as in dog, V as in Victor, A as in Apple. And I say that for civilians because that all of them get everything else. .us. And it's contact@bdva.us. Okay, you can reach us there, or you can reach me at JL Smith, the number 2 at bdva.us. There are several organizations to be able to reach out to. Like one of the organizations that I'm a member of, Common Defense, is taking a strong stance and moving this forward. There where you're at, you know, Pastor Emma Lozano and you guys there in Illinois, Pastor Emma Lozano and the Lincoln Methodist Church are strong supporters. Pastor Julie.
Yeah.
Excuse me?
Yes, I understand. Yeah, because Lozano, I know. Yeah.
And then, you know, around the country, again, there's Deported Veterans Support House. There's Unified U.S. Deported Veterans. There's Repatriate Our Patriots. There's my post, VFW post 7420. But you can reach out to VFWs. We can reach out to American Legions, and you should ask them because they need to know. And if they don't know, this will help them to know. So, but you can reach us, like I said, by contact at bdva.us.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, James. But we're going to have you back on because this is such an important topic and one that we should not be taking lightly. These people put their lives on the line for this country and should not be mistreated. And thank you. So stay with us. Another show's coming up. And America's Heroes Group, keep it in your heart. And yes, James?
Actually, coming up on January 18th, Roundtable in Hawaiian Gardens, California at VFW 7243 with Commander Javier Ortiz and the local politicians from there to do a roundtable to come up with ways to deal with this coming from up in the Los Angeles area.
Yeah, next time we're going to talk about the paint deported veterans portraits next time. So, but I was really
All right,
interested
brother.
in that.
All right.
Bye.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618. Market, advertise.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex.
Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I am Sadiq Colquitt. I am the founder and executive director of the Plant-Based African Center for Nutrition. We are based out of Chicago, but we serve really the globe thanks to the internet. And I want to thank America's Heroes Group for inviting me and having me on the broadcast this evening. And it's just a pleasure to be here. Was here a couple of months ago and was asked to come back. And I just want everybody to know how grateful, humbled, and thankful I am for the opportunity. So want to jump in this evening. I believe last time I was here, we had a bit of a heart-to-heart conversation about diabetes. And this evening, I'd like to focus a little bit on heart disease. Before I do that, though, just a little bit about what we have going on at the Center for Nutrition in January and for the next 4 months, January, February, March, April, and May. We will be hosting challenges for people to give the plant-based diet a shot. And what that looks like is just making a decision that you want to give it a try for 30, 31 days. If you try with us in February, it's 28 days. We just go by the days of the month, but the average is about 30 days to give it a shot. And you can contact us. I'll say it here in the beginning of the broadcast and at the end. You can contact us at PBA Center for Nutrition, all one word, PBA Center for Nutrition.org. One more time, that's PBA Center for Nutrition, one word, .org. So right now we're in the middle of our January jump off, where we host people who are looking to, again, give the plant-based diet a try for at least 30 days. So we look to have fun, inspire people, and then just take accountability for what we are putting into our mouths for those 30 days. So we've got the time seems to go fast. So want to spend a little time talking about heart disease, which is the number one killer, the number one source of how things are, people are disabled in America and across the globe. There are over 750,000 people who succumb to heart disease in some form or fashion in the United States. So whether that be a stroke, a heart attack, an aneurysm, there's just some of the things that we digest that wreak havoc in the body. And I want to talk a little bit about that. And the beginnings of heart disease really start with excess saturated fats and cholesterol. Cholesterol is really something, excess cholesterol, that can wreak havoc in the body and really cause a buildup in our circulatory system, in our arteries. And those fat, waxy substances become what we call plaques. And then those plaques begin to coat the linings of our arteries. They're actually called endothelial cells, and that's the first cell line that is affected by the buildup of this fat, waxy substance, then building into plaques, and then building into heavier plaques, which eventually can break off. And if the top of the plaque buildup breaks off and it floats upstream and finds a smaller place to lodge, then it begins to obstruct or occlude your blood flow. And at that very moment, you are deemed to be having a heart attack. And if that happens to the heart, that's the attack. And then if it happens somewhere leading up to your brain, you are said to be having a stroke. And so that affects hundreds of thousands of people every year and thousands of people every day, every minute of the day. And so it's really a very powerful event because it can rob families of joy. It can cause the holiday season to come to an abrupt end. And it can also really cause pain in people's lives beyond the pain of the person having the heart attack. It can affect husbands, wives, children, grandchildren. And so what we want to do, or what our aim to do at the Plant-Based African Center for Nutrition, is one, to just give you the information and the data so that we can begin to make a choice that we never really knew that we had. And I know that diets are usually positioned as a matter of choice. And so what we've worked to do over the years at the Plant-Based African Center for Nutrition is really extrapolate the data and bring it to you in a way that you can understand, it makes sense, and to give you another level of choice, to give you another level of power over your own life, and to empower you in your level of understanding, and then how you can apply that so that we can take lifestyle diseases such as high blood pressure, such as heart disease, such as diabetes, type 2, we'll get into type 1 maybe at a later broadcast, and even some forms of cancer, and really see that we can eliminate them when we really have a discussion about what the body needs biologically. So we've been working publicly the last 2 years to explain to audiences what food is. And I'm coming back full circle to heart disease. And I said this on, I believe, my first opportunity here. We talked a bit about the definition of food. So I'd like to define food, and then you can really understand a little bit more about even the beginnings of heart disease and cholesterol. So food biologically is defined by 5 fundamental elements. Okay, food is defined by 5 fundamental elements. And those 5 fundamental elements are healthy fats and carbohydrates, vitamins and minerals, fiber, protein, and water content. So again, those 5 elements are healthy fats and carbohydrates. Number 2, vitamins and mineral. Number 3, fiber. Number 4, protein. And number 5, water. Those 5 things meet the biological threshold for your body to consider it food. But we really define, or we characterize a lot of things as food that are not food, or that your body does not consider to be food. Okay. So for instance, based on this definition, a chicken breast would not be food. Well, why is that, Brother Sadiq? Why is a chicken breast not food? And that's because it does not contain any fiber, which you have to have. And then it also contains things that you don't need, like cholesterol. So not only does it not have fiber, and we could walk you through a series of exercises on how important fiber is. So for instance, if you're listening live or on a recording, if you take a moment and you Google the percentage of America that is fiber deficient, if you punch that into your phone, into Google right now, you will come up with 95 to 97%. And so today, as of January 8th, 2025, 95% of the American population, 325 million people, are fiber deficient. And then the next thing I would ask you to look up are the diseases that stem from fiber deficiency. So if you whipped out your phone, you've already got the number of Americans that are fiber deficient. It's nearly everybody. It's 95% of 325,000 people. Now, if you look at the diseases that stem from fiber deficiency, you're going to see, well, it depends on where you come up, but you'll see a list of at least 10. And sometimes the list goes all the way down to 18 or 20, but you'll find diabetes, you'll find heart disease, you'll find many forms of cancer, you'll find autoimmune diseases. Like, the list will go on and on and on. It can even affect your arthritis. And the reason is because animals do not contain fiber. And America is on an animal-centric diet, meaning the average span of meals over the day for someone can look like eggs and cheese for breakfast, no fiber. So the body technically does not consider that food. A chicken sandwich for lunch, no fiber. The body does not consider that food. And if you have ground beef or steak tacos for dinner, again, you are back to no fiber in the main part of your meal. And so that being the case, that's why 95 to 97% of America is fiber deficient. And that's why that's also the floor for disease. But not only, if you take that same meal cycle, and here's where heart disease begins to form. Not only are you fiberless or extremely short on your fiber intake, you're adding cholesterol to your biological makeup, and your system does not know what to do with excess cholesterol. So here's a fact that most people don't know that we work to share. Your liver makes all of the cholesterol you will ever need for your entire lifetime, meaning your body is perfectly 100% calibrated with the amount of cholesterol you need to build tissue, to work inside your body, your organs, right? Your body knows how much cholesterol you need, because we're all unique individuals. Some of us are 6'5". If you're like me, you're 6 feet tall. Some people are 4'11". We have different weights. We have different metabolism rates, but your body in itself is an intelligent piece of biomachinery. and you are perfectly calibrated from birth with the amount of cholesterol that you need. So if you never consumed anything that had cholesterol, you already make it and you already have the perfect amount. So then, Brother Sadiq, how do we get extra cholesterol, which starts to, again, coat the inner lining of our arteries and provide us with the floor of heart disease, eventually developing into plaques, collecting other fats, saturated fats and oils, and moving into the area of plaque, which again can rupture and then cause a heart attack. And the way we get that excess cholesterol is by consuming animals whose bodies also make cholesterol. So there's cholesterol if you take that meal cycle we talked about. If you have eggs and cheese for breakfast, not only do they have no fiber, but they all have excess cholesterol, the egg and the cheese. And so now that cholesterol is there. You have the chicken sandwich. It contains cholesterol, no fiber. And so now you've just upped your cholesterol content. And if you come back in the evening and you have the ground beef or the steak tacos, again, no fiber, but extra cholesterol. So now many of us find ourselves, and I know I found myself at the age of 29 in the doctor's office. And the doctor was telling me, said, Mr. Colquitt, you have high cholesterol and high blood pressure. I'm just going to prescribe this medication for you. Now, you may have to take it the rest of your life, but this is how I'm going to help you battle this. And at the age of 29, the rest of my life sounded like an awfully long time. And I just taking, meds wasn't something that I wanted to do, which led me on this quest to just really understand a little bit more about my personal biology and how diet could have a positive effect on my health. And to this day, I've never had a pharmaceutical med. I did not take those medications, but I began to research at that time the vegan diet, the plant-based diet. There are many names, and I began to change my lifestyle. My blood pressure returned to the level it was when I was 18. Last month was my 54th birthday. I have been disease-free. I am listed. My doctor has me down as a disease-free individual. I have all my numbers are normal, my cholesterol, my A1C scores, my PSA. As a matter of fact, my PSA is below 1. I'm just sharing this with you so that you know that not only is this what I and we at the Center for Nutrition do for a living, but I'm actually my first student, and I'm actually my first client. So it's been very powerful for me. And as someone whose family, aunts, uncles, mom, and dad succumbed to heart disease, my mom had a major heart attack that took her out of here. My dad had an 85% blockage in the main artery leading to his heart. After years, they were very hard workers, very proud. And I love my mom and dad, but fried chicken, steak, seafood, all of these things eventually led to their biological demise. And so the excess cholesterol that we find in the animal products are not friendly to our bodies and to our biological makeup. That's why when we get down to the data of it, and we took time, it took years, really decades, for me and our staff to dig in to over 100 years of research to help define what food is according to the body and how we can live a disease-free life in the Western world and really across the planet. And it comes down to simple subtraction and addition, taking away the things that we don't need, that are not favorable to how the body functions, and then adding the things that are favorable to the body. So that being said, heart disease is something that a change in diet can take your chances of having a heart attack and a stroke can minimize it by up to 80 or 90%. Because if you're not loading the body with cholesterol, then you're not building those plaques. They don't break off, and then they don't clog the arteries that are leading to your heart, to your brain, and other extremities in the body. And now there are even studies that show, right? Because we want to talk about the data. There are studies that show that dementia and Alzheimer's, which plague a lot of our elder community, and it's also starting to plague people in their mid 50s and early 60s, is also dietary, right? Because these plaques, these fats, they build up, and then they stop the oxygen flow to the brain, and your brain has to have at least 20% of all of the oxygen you take in. The brain is an amazing organ, and it's a part of this intelligent biosystem that you have. We like to call it the bioecosystem. And the brain needs at least 20% of the oxygen. And so if you reduce that oxygen flow, because the blood carries the oxygen to the brain, if you reduce that, then the brain cannot function properly. And so Alzheimer's and dementia are showing up more and more, not as a function of age, but it's showing up as a function of diet over time. And so those are the heart-to-heart discussions that we really have to begin to have with our community. Diet over time, not the fact that you're getting older. The body does not break down simply because we grow another number every 12 months. The body breaks down because of what we are doing to it. So we are active participants in our biodemise. And I want us to really be able to have those conversations. So again, cholesterol is not an item that we need to constantly be adding to our makeup. And that's why those 5 things that I talked about, those healthy fats, right? Those vitamins and minerals, the fiber, the protein, and the water, those are the essential makeup. That is the essential makeup of food. And so your body will take those 5 items. Those things are found in collard greens, kale greens, mustard and turnip greens. It's found in black-eyed peas, right? We just got through with the new year. It's found in corn. It's found in okra. It's found in really plant life, but also in the fungus world, right? With mushrooms. So the definition of food lives beyond a category or a lifestyle choice, because even if you are call yourself vegan or you call yourself plant-based and you are consuming processed foods and cookies and cakes and those things that really really keep the body from its most efficient functioning, you can still succumb to heart disease or a diabetic condition, although at a slower rate than somebody that is consuming animals. So the idea is to flood our diets with food as defined. And I'll say this as we get ready to move toward a close. I know we've got about 4 minutes left, but food, and when I'm sharing with audiences, I let them know that food as defined, there are things that food cannot do because it's not biologically equipped to do it, right? And so when we're talking about food, again, we're talking about those collard greens, we're talking about mustards and turnips, we're talking about black-eyed peas, we're talking about okra, we're talking about cantaloupe, watermelon, we're talking about strawberries, grapes, right? Food will not cause a heart attack. It's not biologically possible. Food will not cause obesity. Food won't give us diabetes. Food is not capable of accelerating your cancer. Food right, as defined, will not cause your body to have high cholesterol. And that's because there's no cholesterol in biological food. There's no cholesterol in any plant. You could go down the list across the monk fruit, jackfruit, pomegranate, oranges, apples, bananas. Again, we go through cabbage, carrots, onions, zucchini. We could just, millions of what we call plant food across the world, and there's zero cholesterol, zero. And so it's also a part of the intelligent engineering of this wonderful world that we live in. And so we are really proud at the Plant-Based African Center for Nutrition of our staff, the work we've done over the years. I mean, this year alone, we've helped African-American young men from their 40s through their mid-50s work their way back from the threshold of prostate cancer, reducing PSA scores, working people back from A1C scores that were 10, 11, 12 and higher to 6 and below, taking cholesterol levels that were in the 230s, 240s, 250s, and bringing them down into the 180s and the 170s, right? Taking people off of the precipice of having to have surgery. This is the work that we do on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. So that being said, I've only got about 2 minutes left. Want to say join us if you can for the January jump off. I know we're at January 8th, but it's okay. You can get more than 3 weeks in with us, but we also have February, we have March, and we're going to be basically working through the first 2 quarters of 2025 to introduce people to the plant-based diet. And I want to let you know, if you want to come see us in person at no charge. We'll be on the south side of Chicago at 2035 East 79th Street. That's the Colony All Nations Pentecostal Church, where we will be presenting our signature seminar experience. It's called Foodish, where we define food and we talk in detail about what we went over this evening. We talk in detail about heart disease. We talk about diabetes. We talk about certain forms of cancer, like prostate cancer and breast cancer, which affect African-American men and women very heavily. So again, I want to say thank you to the America's Hero Group for having us on. I want to say thank you to the audience, those of you that are listening and have been with us this evening. You can reach us at the PBA Center for Nutrition.org. Again, that's PBA Center for Nutrition.org. I am Sadiq Colquitt, the founder and executive director, and we'd love to have you join us. Look us up and at least come have a conversation with us. You can lead a disease-free life at any age. My dad was 82 when he started. So we love you. We appreciate you. Have a great evening. And thanks again for having us on the program.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.